Welcome back. My name is Steve Lucian. Let me ask you a question. Can you imagine diving, then all of a sudden you feel a pain in your chest and you're having a heart attack? Well, this scenario was very real for a guy named Brian about 10 years ago, and he filmed the entire thing. We're going to be watching this video together. I have Brian coming on directly afterwards, so you're not going to want to miss it. Then, as part of this video, I have Dr. Doug Ebersol coming on. He's an interventional cardiologist as well as a tech diving instructor and avid cave diver. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be very interesting. All right, let's get started. All right, so we have Brian joining me today. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. I took a look at your video and very interesting. It did not seem like a real high adventure video by any means, but after knowing the story behind it, that's why I reached out and I wanted to find you because, man, you're having a heart attack underwater. So first of all, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then let's get into this.
Hey, Steve, thanks for tracking me down. That video's been out there for about a decade at this point. That was Labor Day weekend, 2012. My name is Brian Hughes, and I'm talking to you from Florence, South Carolina. But that was up in the St. Lawrence Seaway, out near Brockton, I think it's called. Yeah, it doesn't look like that great of adventure. But as I'll talk about throughout this thing, panic is not your friend. And if there's one takeaway for anybody watching this thing, don't hold your breath, don't hyperventilate, just keep breathing through it. And that's probably why it doesn't look all that amazing, except I'm actively having a heart attack in the middle of it. So that would be my advice. If you turn the rest of this thing off, don't, because we want you to watch the rest of
Yes,
this.
please.
But that's the piece that I'd have you walk away with.
Along the lines of the series that we're doing right now on YouTube, it's all about being a healthier diver. And this particular video we're doing, I am talking about cardiovascular health, heart health, and how it plays into us as divers. So when I came across your video, man, it was highly interesting. So yeah, walk us through that dive.
Well, let me start with I had kind of brownish blonde hair until the dive. And then after my quad bypass, within about 6 months, my hair did this. So
Wow.
there's your first indication. Suddenly you look a whole lot older.
Wow.
As they say, an adventure is reading about someone else in deep crap somewhere else, far, far away. So
Yeah.
that's sort of what this is going to be all about. We went up to Kingston and from there up to Brockville, which is on the St. Lawrence. Uh, uh, Up in Canada, drove from Maryland up there. Had done that several times with Mark. We've been diving up that way, no big deal. The St. Lawrence has a current, so whenever you're diving, you have a down line and you usually a jump line or something out to a wreck, and then you dive. So we drove up there the night before. I didn't sleep well. Since you brought up my friend Mark, he snores. like a lumberjack that's been out in the weeds, and
He'll appreciate
hauling
that
all
little
day.
he'll appreciate that plug-in, I'm sure, that's awesome.
I'm sure. So I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. So I figured that's what was going on. When the first dive of the day, they weren't really, they weren't very deep dives. First one was like 90 feet, and I didn't feel all that great when I came up. I didn't quite know what was going on. The second dive, as you watch the video, um, that it's right near the end. I had some, I was starting to feel some chest pain. But when I got back up to the bow of the gasket, if you listen carefully, you can actually hear me grunt when I grab the front rail. And it's like that, the baseball bat to the chest kind of thing. And, still had to get back over. If you watch the video, I'm kind of in task overload, trying to reel my reel back up. I almost just dumped it on the bottom. Um, Short version is, if you listen carefully, and for anybody that's watching this is what comes from diving quite a while, or just in the back of my brain, I'm thinking panic is not your friend. So if you listen carefully, you'll notice that my breathing rate doesn't even change that much. So I was really conscious of that like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to panic.
Brian, how many dives did you have at this point in your dive career?
Oh geez,
Roughly,
I
do you
don't
have an
know,
idea?
six, seven, 800. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, so, I mean, you think you had
I've been
enough
doing this for decades, buddy.
you had enough u under your belt to know, like, stay calm. Interesting. Okay, go on, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
So I made it back up to the boat. I had trouble getting on the boat. They pulled me up on the boat. And we'll get into it a little bit later. You can ask me some questions about it. But I'd been, a power lifter when I was in my 30s, weightlifter. I did do a lot of running and cardiovascular stuff, but a lot of anaerobic. So I couldn't believe this was happening to me. This is about, a little over a decade ago at this point. So I didn't know
Wow,
what was going on, but I took a couple aspirin, pain went away. Spent the night up there. And the next morning, I had to convince Mark, I don't know what was going on, but I think we should go back home. So I had to bail on that next day dive, drove 8.5 hours back to Maryland, was unloading the car. And the wife said, "Hey, we're going to the hospital." And, the rest is history. You show up and you say, "I've got heart pain or chest pain." They throw you in a wheelchair, took me in the back, hooked me up. "Hey, you've had a heart attack. You're not going home." And that led to a quad bypass.
wow.
So
So we
a
can
lot of
say
fun.
your wife definitely played a role in, getting you the
I
help
won
you
I,
need.
I won my man card, but she never believes me when I say I'm doing okay.
Wow,
So, yeah.
wow. So you were saying, is it anaerobics?
Yeah, anaerobic weightlifting. I did a little bit of time on the bike, but and the reason why I bring that up, and if your docs decide to comment afterwards, um, again, I'll leave it to you to ask wherever you want this to go. My primary was 95% blocked. Why didn't I die is really the question. It was about a 2 knot current on the wreck. Still had to get back to the boat. And the theory, my surgeon said he didn't see a much external damage to the heart. Obviously, I'd had a heart attack
Wow,
because the chemicals showed it and all that, the EKG. But the theory is that working out and lifting all those years, that as the clots developed, collateral blood flow developed around the clot enough to keep me alive. That's the working theory.
interesting.
You could
Very
talk about the higher PPO2 at that depth, although I wasn't on any enriched air, I wasn't on nitrox or anything. But yeah, I mean, I tried real hard to be dead and it didn't take. It should have, but it didn't. So
well, I'm
here I
glad
am 10
man,
years later, man.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, it's crazy. Yeah, so I scouring the internet trying to find you, and it didn't take very long, but as soon as I got a hold of Mark, I thought Mark was you. So we were talking on the phone,
Ah,
and he was telling me a little bit about his experience on the dive and his perspective, and he didn't know you were going through, having a heart attack. So tell us a little bit about that dive. Mark told me something kind of funny. He was frustrated with you because you were doing something on the dive.
yeah, I kept stopping. Like we got to the wreck, and then I went back up I don't know if it's an anchor line, mooring line, whatever. But because you're in the river, it's not vertical. I mean, it's like stretched out. So it looks like we're going horizontal. So I got now something's going on. So I went about halfway back up, the pain stopped, and it's like, okay, let's go. And then later on in the wreck, I grab him and I go, I don't know what's going on. He was really getting. Later, he told me he was pretty frustrated with me. that because he didn't know what was going on, why I kept stopping
Mark
and
told me, he
why.
said it was one of the best wrecks that he's ever been on. He's like, "We're
Yep,
doing this wreck, man. We're doing this wreck,"
yep,
is what he told me. So he said you kept on grabbing his arm or stopping, and he was confused, and he was like, "No, we're not stopping. We're doing this wreck." Of course, he didn't
exactly,
know you were having a medical
exactly.
emergency.
And if you look it up online, it's the Gaskin in the St. Lawrence, and it looks like a Disneyland wreck. I mean, it's like perfectly upright, a wooden vessel. I mean, it is beautiful. It's like what you think a shipwreck's supposed to look like.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. I mean, that we can have this conversation. So tell me a little bit about the recovery. Tell me about, so you went in, what did they have to do surgery wise, and what was the recovery like?
Yeah, so the hospital was at, ironically, they were revamping their catheter unit or whatever they call it. So they had to keep me overnight, and then they were going to send me into Baltimore. Oh, my dog's just showed up, and hopefully she doesn't get in the way. Um, and so I had a choice of hospitals. It's Labor Day weekend. It's 3-day weekend. I figure, all the attendings are off on vacation. The residents have all been up for 30 hours. So I'm thinking, don't send me to a teaching hospital. So I'm going down a list. So they sent me over to St. Joseph's the next morning. Did the cath. Sorry, all your blockages in the wrong place. No stents for you. You get the full Monty. So they were going to do 3. They ended up doing 4 while I was under. Recovery physically wasn't that big a deal. I mean, I say big a deal. I mean, you can't lift more than 10 pounds for 6 weeks. Um, and I lost an awful lot of body mass pretty quickly. Um, I think I'll explain, I had pump head for a good 3 to 6 months afterwards. A good friend of mine's an anesthesiologist. He said that can kind of happen between
Explain what pump head is for those that don't know what that is. You explained it to me over the phone, and it was
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's not real sure. It may be a combination of the residuals from the anesthesia or the breakdown, depending on how long you're under, the breakdown of blood, hemoglobin, and so forth, the particles that kind of plug up capillaries in your brain and so forth. And so it was like living in fog. It was really weird for months. I thought about retiring early because of it. And then all of a sudden it went away, and I was kind of back to normal, as it were. My cardiologist um, said I could dive again. I went a couple times. Um, just wasn't any fun anymore.
So it
I
obviously
stopped
affected.
diving.
That was my next question, is how
Yep.
did it affect your dive career?
I still have a small fortune in equipment that I haven't been willing to give up. But the short version is I bought a submarine because I figure everything happens in slow motion in a submarine. So I'm in a big steel tube, and if I,
I thought my dive addiction was bad, man. I bought a rebreather. He buys a submarine.
oh man, I used to build do-it-yourself rebreathers. We haven't had that conversation yet.
Oh
I
man,
used to,
that'll be another one.
based
Another
on
day.
based on surplus East German O2 regulators, and they were KISS style and all that. Yeah, I
That's
should
for another
yeah, I
video.
shouldn't be alive for a lot of reasons.
That's great, man. Yeah. Wow. So you bought a submarine, and
Yep,
so you still dive. It's just a little bit different than the way I
yep,
dive, apparently.
yep.
Well, man, that's awesome. And how are you doing now? How's your health today?
10 years later, anybody that's been through anything like that, when it happens when you're younger. So I was 55, and I was easily the youngest guy on the recovery unit. I mean, everybody else are these old guys with their little poles in the bags, tottering down the hallway when they start getting you walking, and I'm just like striding along. But anybody that's been through that kind of, you should be dead, but it didn't take event, it really does switch up some of your priorities. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to change up my lifestyle
Wow.
and so forth? But as far as I know, I was the president of a dive club at the time, and I showed the video, and it's like dead silent in the end. And then somebody said something I won't repeat because it may not, the censors on YouTube may not let me say it. 4-letter words about why I shouldn't be here. I don't know if anybody else has had that kind of heart attack on a wreck and survive. Again, 2 knot current. I still got to get back the jump line, back to the up line, back up to the boat. Um, but I shouldn't be here. But I think a lot of it had to do with all those years of taking care of myself, and why I didn't really understand that that's what I just been through. It's like, hey, I'm in my 50s, but hey, I'm lifting weights and I'm in good shape and I've been doing this for years. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I didn't sleep well or something I ate. So I took some aspirin, went away, no big deal. But that's not what it was at all. So
It's amazing. So you're working out, being healthy, your lifting, all that stuff, I mean,
yep,
obviously played a big role into you making it and being able to talk to me about this today. That's important, man. And we are going to be talking to Dr. Doug Ebersol, and he is a cardiologist, so it's going to be interesting to get his take on this. And but man, listen, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been a
sure,
big help, and I look forward to getting to know you more and maybe take a look at your submarine one day. So we'll have to set up a time.
cool.
Thank you for watching the entire video. I hope I've earned your subscription, your thumbs up, and maybe you'll hit that bell for future notifications. Listen, we're not done yet. You can click on the next part of this video right here. You're not going to want to miss it. I interviewed Dr. Doug Ebersol. All right, you dive safe, and I'll see you in the water. Click the video.